From It to Children of the Corn, Stephen King has been able to create these deep, chilling stories that stick with you for months to come. One of the newest films to be based upon one of his novels is Gerald's Game, which speaks about sexuality, trauma, and escaping dire situations. I'm Oki Castro, and this is Talking Shots.
I like to
So chief, it's the return of the blade and slice shade, getting paid until my silhouette fades. A mercenary, spit the levy versus scary stage, doing girlies dirty, splitting with.
So just to give you guys a quick rundown, Gerald's Game is the story of this couple who, because of their strained marriage, go out on a vacation together. They stay together by this cabin in the woods and end up, experimenting a little bit sexually. So as they get to the cabin in the woods, the wife ends up realizing that there's this stray dog that is hanging outside. And her being a kind and loving person, as her character is, she decides to feed it some of the Wagyu beef that they have stored in the fridge. Which, if you know, that shit's like $300 a steak to a stray dog. Shoutouts to you, lady. Because if you didn't know, us here at Talking Shots, we love puppies. So after feeding the dog, she goes back into the bedroom with her husband. And as I mentioned, their relationship has been strained, so they wanted to experiment a bit. This time, getting a little bit into They wanted to experiment a bit with BDSM, aka handcuffs in this specific situation. So, wife, being wonderful, accepting wife that she is, allows herself to get handcuffed to the bed. This bed with reinforced poles on the side, which is very important. While she's being tied up, her husband leaves her there for a second, goes to the bathroom, pops a little blue pill, one of those that'll get you. Yeah. I'm grossed out by how I said that, but it's fine, it's good, that's good. So our boy takes the Viagra and he moves over to the bed where homegirl is already tied up and begins foreplay. She's clearly not into it in any way, shape, or form. And he kind of just keeps on pushing this rape fantasy on her until finally she just screams and tells him to stop. He gets super duper upset because this is his fantasy. So husband gets furious and he starts to try to guilt her back into experimenting again, which is a dick move. Don't ever fucking do that. Whatever. So then while he sees that she's still not into it, she's still handcuffed to the bed. He tries getting on top of her again and she's still not feeling it. And of course, homeboy gets a heart attack because of the dick pills. So homie gets a heart attack, falls off the bed, and at first you're like, oh, maybe he just got knocked unconscious, maybe he's not dead. Until you see the camera just pan a little bit to the side where wife is trying to look and you see a puddle of blood. So if you thought things couldn't get worse, guess which dumbass forgot to lock the door? The wife. Guess who comes in? The dog. We love puppies. Dog walks into the bedroom and then proceeds to begin to consume the flesh of the husband. So now wife is stuck in this horrible situation where she has to find a way out, see if she could still save her husband and make sure that this fucking cannibal dog does not consume her before she loses her own freaking mind, which is immediately what happens. Now let's start with one of the basic elements of the film that immediately grasped me, and that's the fact that this, like many other horror movies, mixes sexuality with horror. The sexuality part plays such a detrimental element within the film because of how it plays out. What starts off as an exploration of, fetishes and kinks through BDSM slowly starts bringing up repressed memories of the wife, the main character, aka traumatic experiences that she had when she was younger. What we're given from there is that you see why she was so reluctant to want to experiment with the husband, but also why she's, just trying her best to please her husband in the same aspect. Now let me make one thing incredibly clear. We here at Talking Shots also completely respect boundaries and any type of physicality. If you want to practice BDSM, do it, but make sure that you're both on board. If someone says no, you respect that. If someone says yes, baby, you give them what they want. Yeah, make sure you use a safe word because it's very easy to cross boundaries, and the worst thing you want to ever do is ruin a sexual experience by not respecting the other person. So now this movie actually shows sexuality in both a positive and a negative light because of the fact that the character has to deal with so many repressed memories of bad sexual experiences that end up actually playing a deeper role later on. I'm not gonna spoil that. What makes this movie so chilling are the psychological aspects and the way that the wife handles the situation that she's put in. From the time that she's tied up, she immediately begins to hallucinate, and this film quickly starts to blur the lines between reality, fiction, and just her own psyche trying to help her out. This, coupled with the directing style, makes such minute accomplishments.
I ain't gonna lie, I'm a little smashed.
Minute accomplishments so heavy and detrimental to the story. One scene in the movie that is so important, she starts realizing that it's been almost a day since she's had water and she's starting to suffer from dehydration. There's a cup of water right above the headboard of the bed because the husband had drank from that water when he took his little dick pills. So she realizes she has to find a way to grab them while still being chained up. So with one of the biggest plot points being just getting a glass of water and having it feel so heavy to the story, just imagine when you start getting to the real nit and grit of the film. You could say nitty gritty, nit and grit, same thing. People say nitty gritty because they're trying to make it childish. Now, mental trauma ends up being another big element within the film. It ends up saving the character in a lot of situations that could have ended up a lot worse, but she ends up facing her demons. For example, there's a very, very important flashback, again, not gonna go into too much detail, where she gets abused by someone and they actually guilt her into keeping it a secret. It wasn't as horrible as some of the stories I've heard in real life, but it was enough that it stuck with her, where it actually molded the character and explains a lot of her reactions to situations. Watch the film. I don't want to go too much into it because it's so important and it's such a good scene, especially when you see how it unfolds. Let's start with the dog when we talk about the metaphors that are presented throughout the film. The dog is actually not a bad character. He's just a natural character that is reacting how a natural animal would act. It's hungry, it wants to eat, it's looking for flesh. They kind of touch upon this throughout the film where you see certain characters are almost justified by, oh, they're just doing what they're supposed to do. It's within their nature, they're not doing anything wrong. But that's where the big divide splits. What can actually be attested to nature and what could be attested to cognitive thinking. The dog is more so trying to consume any of the evil and instead is justified with what it does. It's a dog being a dog. It didn't go out of its way to, kill the husband on purpose. It was hungry. It was just being a dog. So eclipses in this film, like in many others, holds a lot of metaphorically significant weight. In this film, the eclipse represents a change in being, where a huge circumstance, a huge occurrence happens during an eclipse that completely changes the course of our main character's life, hence why it's a reoccurring theme throughout the film. At first, you're just shown it through a flashback of when she was a child, but later on, it keeps on reoccurring in a lot of her nightmares that she has while being chained up. As I mentioned before, Stephen King does an amazing job, at least with the original book, of creating this blurred sense of what is real and what is not. And this is what causes so much anxiety for the viewer throughout the film. At certain points, you're not sure who's alive in the film. You're not sure what is real. Is the dog even really there, or is it just the main character going into hysteria? What an interesting factor within the film is the role that the fake things, the things that are not part of reality, play. They end up playing a way deeper role than anything that's actually there. The dog is a threat. Her hallucinations sometimes end up being a threat, but they also end up guiding her into the right direction. They help her problem solve and keep whatever bit of sanity she still has, while also realizing the physiological changes that are happening to her body, such as dehydration, such as hunger, such as fatigue. Remember, she's been stuck, chained up for, let's just say, a few days or more than just a couple of hours, so your limbs start to get tired. And her hallucinations actually help remind her of that. What's most important is that these hallucinations end up guiding her into her final goal within the film, which really leads her at that pinnacle of life or death. Will I die here and be eaten? Or will I actually be able to survive and escape? And if I do escape, at what cost will that be? Gerald's game is gripping from the start of the movie to the absolute end. What starts off as a film that feels like it would only use sexuality as more so, like a segue into the actual storyline, it ends up using it as a mechanic, as a factor, as something that guides the main character while also hinders her from being able to do certain things. The entire film, I was at the edge of my seat, constantly asking myself, is she actually gonna make it, or will she die because of her wanting to experiment with her husband? Where this film excels is its ability to have so many different parts and aspects working together to create one cognitive motion. It keeps the movie fluid without getting overly complicated or, getting lost within its own head. What I mean by that is, it's really easy to use metaphors within a movie. It's really easy to have a villain character within the movie. It's really easy to have horror and gore, have sexuality, have everything. But it's also really easy to get lost within all these. Throughout this film, I didn't feel lost. The story was easy to follow, but also deep enough for me to get shook as things progressed on. And I will say this, the ending was something I did not expect. It was so far out from the blue that at first where you're actually satisfied, let's just say you're satisfied with, hey, there's an ending, there's an extra scene where some of the aspects within the film rear their heads back and really solidify what this story was. It's fascinating, it's interesting. This is a good psychological movie. This is a good thriller film. And this just proves you don't need slashers, you don't need beheadings, you don't need any casual cinema trope to even guide you throughout a film. Sometimes it just takes a good story, a good cast, and good directing. And that's what Gerald's Game is. So tell me, what did you guys think? Was this movie just way too complicated? Am I, making a fuss out of nothing? Or was it just the right level of deep for someone of your viewing standards? Remember to comment below, like, share, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And remember, this is Talking Shots.